Our next speaker is Emmi Fortin, a breakup and relationship coach who has dedicated her life to guiding individuals through the tumultuous journey of starting over after a relationship ends. Recognizing that breakups can be pivotal moments, Emmi has turned her own experiences of love, passion, and heartbreak into a mission to empower others. Emmi's transition from a high school biology teacher to an award-winning author and sought-after expert showcases her incredible bravery and dedication to helping people through their most challenging moments. And her spicy memoir, Who is Your Red Dress? One Woman's Quest to Break Up with a Love Addiction, offers guidance and inspiration to anyone looking to embrace their true selves and move forward from heartbreak. Please welcome Emmi.
Thank you so much, Anita. And thank you very much, everybody, for coming and listening to our stories today. I'm just going to dive right in with a question for you, which is, have you ever thought about writing your personal story? I want you to just think about one moment in your life that you might choose to write about. Okay, what would that be? Now, I know that some of us here have already taken that leap, all of these inspiring people, speakers that we've been listening to today. And in a survey done of 2,000 Americans, 50% think that their life is worthy of a book deal, and 54% want to share their challenges and how they overcame them. But only 15% have started writing, and a mere 6% have made it halfway through. Now, I get it, because the idea of writing a whole book can seem very overwhelming, and the idea of sharing your personal story with the world might be even more so. So, what if you were to write with the intention that no one else gets to read it except for you? Could you write it so freely, honestly, and vulnerably that it shocks even you? This one act could have a profound impact on your life. Now, the idea of writing a whole book might be too big to start with. So, what is one moment, one story that you can start with? This is what I did, and it changed the trajectory of my life in every area of my life more than I could have ever imagined. Years ago, I was just an ordinary high school biology teacher of over a decade when a passionate and tumultuous relationship turned my life upside down. I had become a regular in the salsa dancing scene, moved by the rhythms of the conga drums and timbales, and invigorated by the euphoria I would feel when freely moving my body to the clave. And it was here that I met a man who I became deeply entangled with. And the need for both him and the salsa scene took on an addictive quality. I looked to both of them as a way to escape the restrictions that I had put on myself in my own life, but also as a way to get hits of adrenaline and dopamine, filling these voids in myself that I didn't even know existed yet. But this was not a traditional relationship. This was a situationship, which means that we didn't have a title for each other, making the relationship feel very confusing and uncomfortably uncertain. We were acting like a couple when we were alone together, but I was often introduced as just a friend. We endured multiple breakups with each other over and over. This toxic cycle was taking a huge toll on me mentally, emotionally, and physically, but I could not stay away. I vividly remember one morning looking over at this sleeping man next to me who I had now been involved with for years. And a thought just popped into my head. He's exactly like a red dress. All of a sudden, words and phrases just started filling my mind from left and right like shooting stars, and I had this undeniable urge to write it all down. So I slipped out of bed and locked myself in another room, grabbed my phone, and feverishly started typing. And it sounded like this. I have this red dress. It hugs every curve of my body. Bam! The sight of that deep crimson red next to my white skin is striking, exciting me to my core. I feel high and like pure woman in this dress. I love this dress. But slowly, this dress becomes uncomfortable. bulging in weird places and exposing every one of my imperfections. Thwarting my breath, curbing my appetite, I feel ridiculous in this dress. This dress now makes me feel subpar in every way. I hate this dress. When I wake up in the morning, I see my red dress on the floor and I think about how many invigorating memories I have while wearing it. I've had it for years now. My thirst that I feel when I zip it up returns, and I immediately forgive it against my better judgment. I indulge and go back for more. Who is your red dress? Unknowingly, this one super short story was the beginning of my journey toward uncovering and exposing my authentic self. See, I had really lost myself in that relationship in particular. And as a breakup and relationship coach, I hear the same kind of story from hundreds of people when their relationship ends or if they've been in a challenging one. They use words like no purpose, lost, hopeless, fearful, uncertain, and of course, sad and lonely. And this is to be expected. You are grieving the loss of a person in your life, but also a version of reality that you were living. You start to question everything you ever believed to be true. But here is where I notice the path splits. Some people become fixated, obsessed, and even dependent on their narrative around what the other person did or didn't do. They hold on to betrayal, abandonment, anger, and resist change. And this places you in what I refer to as love purgatory, where you want to move on so badly, but instead you just remain stuck. Or you keep repeating your same patterns with new people. This is where I had remained stuck for years. The other path involves you starting to question everything about yourself, who you are, what role you are playing in your own life. You start to get curious about what your experiences are trying to show you and wonder if you can start to see things differently. This is a good thing because when we can get deep and raw, we can bring awareness to the opportunity that lives in the disruption. Essentially, we can tune into our own intuition, our authenticity. Now, I continue to write short vignettes like Red Dress all throughout that relationship to process my intense emotions that on some days truly felt unendurable. There were days where I was disappointed that I had woken up at all, and it would have been easier. And quite honestly, I would have preferred it if I could just remain sleeping forever. But I did start to notice a shift as I continued to write from the third person perspective, because I could see different angles of my relationship and my life as I was developing the narratives of the other characters in my story. Now, I was also reading this really fun book by writer Kristen Newman that resonated with me at the time regarding my choices and the kind of life I was living. But I found myself clinging to the hope that her book would have a happy ending. And I thought it might predict where my life could potentially end up. And then I realized, what if my story could be this for someone else too? What if someone else was going through a very similar thing to me and reading my story could help them feel heard and seen? What if my story could be the light at the end of the tunnel for someone else, like this book was kind of being for me? So I decided that I was going to string my stories together and eventually publish a book someday. Plus, I wanted to keep writing because I wanted to see where my life was going to end up. I knew I had to leave that relationship for good, but I still hadn't figured out how to help myself do that. I knew that I also needed an ending for my book that was transformative and offered resolution. I couldn't end up back in that toxic relationship yet again. That would be a horrible ending. So I started changing my life choices in real time and put myself on a new path, not only to grow my life, but also so that when it came time to write an ending for my book, I would be proud of it. Writing my story was changing my life as it was happening because it allowed me to start looking at a different future, letting go of things that weren't serving me and also I knew wouldn't get me to where I wanted to be. And I also wondered, how might my character create the life that she wants? Now, I was also binging on personal development resources like books, podcasts, hiring life coaches. I started practices like meditation, yoga, cleaned up my diet. I even went on some solo trips that were life changing to Spain and Cuba. And all of these things were really important pieces to my heartbreak recovery puzzle. But there was one piece that stands out. Every day while I ate dinner, I would watch interviews on YouTube of people who had been through tremendous hardship and came out the other side uber successful, kind of like some of the stories we've been hearing here tonight. And I became fascinated and obsessed with how they went from their point A to point B. And their stories became my belief system that this could happen for me too. So for me, the key to moving forward was story. I did eventually decide to leave that relationship for good. Finally, the time had come to click that little publish button on my memoir. The days leading up to that were really intense. Things got very real very fast as I realized that I was publishing 380 pages of super intimate, vulnerable, and never yet shared before information onto the internet, and more frightening for me, into the hands of people I know and who love me. I had emotional breakdowns, body convulsions, tears, filling up with emotions like shame and guilt around the stories that I chose to include. I was filled with a lot of inner conflict about the fact that I had been a role model for years, and what would people think about my judgment and about the stories that I had shared. But for the first time in my life, I was sharing all of me. And this single-handedly was the most powerful thing that I could have ever done for myself. I wasn't just sharing the perfectionist version of me that I thought I should be, nor was I sharing the version that I thought other people would approve of. And with this one act, I was telling myself, I accept you for exactly who you are and for where you have been. I forgive you for when you were disconnected from yourself. And I love you. And I will support you through whatever consequences come from this. Prior to this, I had always looked outside of myself, particularly to relationships, for my sense of worth, fulfillment, and accomplishment. And I was really scared to share my story, but I knew it was pivotal for my growth and also for my potential to help countless other people. And I feel more connected to myself now than I ever have been. And I've discovered that my story actually connects me with other people because they reach out and say, hey, I'm in a similar relationship and I'm inspired to change. They reach out and say, hey, will you please help me with my breakup or divorce? Because they heard my story and they think I get it. And they heard it on a podcast or listened to my audiobook. And the most satisfying for me is that I get to help people write their empowering narrative about their relationship or their life through the reflection questions in my coaching program or through creative memoir style writing. All of this and so much more because I embarked on the journey, the process of writing my story. And so I wonder what this process could do for you. Whether you choose to write about a challenge, a relationship, a win, or maybe a dream, can you get so real and raw with yourself without anyone else watching? What does your story sound like? And could it bring you closer to your authentic self? I will leave you with this quote from a very popular book by author Don Miguel Ruiz called The Four Agreements. We are all searching for ways to be free and live our lives. It takes a lot of courage to accept ourselves. No matter where you are in your life, I believe in you and I want to hear your story. So if it's okay, I would love to share my screen, and I guess I can't do that today. So please connect with me, and I would love to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Emmy. As a writer, I love the practice of writing your story as a way to live the future you want to create.
I agree.
Big Care Bear stare heart to you.
Love the Care Bear stare.